Hello and welcome to Games Now. We are back. We're ready to start. So my name is Anna-Kaisa Kultima and this is Games Now. Straight from Aalto University, we are bringing you the best panel of the year 2021. So from the request of the students, we want to go through how is it to form a game company in Finland. It's not in any other countries. This is a specific country for forming a game company. We have a hugely nice ecosystem here, and we have such big seniority in founding companies. In this panel, there are multiple companies formed altogether. I didn't even count, but there's so much information in this panel, and I'm so excited. I hope you can hear it from my voice. I'm back in the business also. With my co-host Solip.
Hello.
And finally here, and we will be moving to our presentations because this is a huge panel of 5 people. But just a couple of words why I wanted to curate this kind of a panel is that there are so many lessons that people learn from forming their first company, their second company, their third or fourth or fifth or whichever company. And this panel will go through so many different angles for forming different kinds of game companies, and not just game studios, but also game-related software or services. So let's have Solip introduce our fine panelists, and I'll put you into the screen now, panelists. Hey, everybody!
Hello. Yes, awesome. So we have 5 panelists today, which is the biggest one so far for our Games Now online and Twitch Live. So let me quickly introduce all of our panelists who are awesome people right here. So let me first introduce Carolina Corpo. Carolina is a founder, CEO, and creative director at 10th Muse. She has over a decade-long years of experience in the gaming industry of various different positions, including art lead, producer, and lead designer, including being a design lead for City Skylines. Welcome, Carolina. And next is Samuli Shuvahuoko. Hope I pronounced your name correctly.
That was perfect.
Yay. Samuli is currently a founding partner at Sisu Games Ventures. He founded Remedy Entertainment in 1995 when he was just 21. Since then, he founded and exited many video game companies as a serial entrepreneur, and now focusing on advisory and investment on game companies. We also have Stella Wong, the CEO and co-founder at Dazzle Rocks. She formerly worked as a product manager and executive producer at Rovio Entertainment, where she developed new games and IPs while leading their R&D teams. Okay, and there is Teemu Haila, is our next panelist. Teemu is a co-founder and CPO at MetaPlay. He's also one of the men behind the growth of IGDA Finland. I hope you're probably aware how big and awesome this organization is. IGDA Finland has become one of the biggest regional professional game dev societies in the world. He also co-founded Play Raven, which was acquired by Rovio in 2018. And finally, but not least, is Sulka Haro, who is working currently at Mainframe Industries, with a new game studio consisting of veteran developers from Helsinki and Reykjavik. Haro has been working as a game designer for almost 2 decades. One of the latest work with Next Games, the Walking Dead game series. Before Mainframe Industries, he has also been leading design at Habbo Hotel, as well as founding Makilev, a 3D printing toys and game startups. So you can tell how awesome our panelists are today. And first, we're going to have our panelists to give 5 minutes presentations introducing themselves and their experience, and also make sure that you guys know who our panelists are.
Yeah, but before we go there, just a couple of hey, and where are you actually located right now? So,
Sorry.
Yeah?
Where are you guys at the moment physically?
Karolina, you're in Helsinki.
Yes, I'm at home. I'm in the kitchen where the woman.
Woman's place. Oh my god. Samuli,
Same
are you
here,
also
very much. No, home.
Teemu also Helsinki.
Yeah, home.
Helsinki.
Not in Helsinki.
Espoo is yeah.
Espoo.
Yeah,
Sulka.
I'm actually at our summer home, somewhere between Fiskars and Karjaa. So
nice.
dial again.
Nice area.
Yep.
Stella.
I'm in Helsinki. I'm in the office. I basically spend majority of time in office. So yes, I'm in office.
Yeah, it's just so weird times that we don't know where the people are at the moment, and you can be anywhere. So yeah, so Solip, who will be our first panelist to start with the presentation? Let's just get into the business and start talking about the experiences that you've had.
Okay, let's first start with Karolina. Karolina, can you share your screen and are you ready?
I will try my best. Let's see. Yes. So
just
now
wait a second. Just
yes,
a technical thing.
Yeah. So, are you seeing it?
I will do. You can start, but I will shortly do something with the view. But just go ahead.
Okay. So hello, I'm Karolina. I've been doing games for quite some time. It has been my profession, basically, after my studies for the last quite many years. So I'm a Bachelor of Media from Tampere University of Applied Sciences, and then I did Internet and Game Studies at the Tampere University at their fantastic hypermedia program was the name when I was studying, but it changes names often. But so my studies are in this field of like graphic design, creativity, videos, games, everything to do with this. I quite traditionally started my journey in the games industry as an intern. I came to do QA with mobile phones. Before the iPhone, we had like 300 different handsets and had to test the game with each one with the sounds on, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't know if the sounds go missing. So that was fun. Then I continued to, because why I actually applied for the trainee position was that they promised that I can then proceed to become an artist, which was actually what I was studying. But there is just the tiny hiccup that once you have trained a QA engineer so that they can actually like reliably test a product, you don't really want to move them anywhere else because good QA engineers are not easy to find. So I needed to actually switch to a new company to be able to become a lead artist. So I did. Then I was originally borrowed by Colossal Order for game design purposes, because even as an artist, we had such a small team that everyone did everything. And I noticed that I actually like game design quite a lot. And then Colossal actually needed a game design. And I had not done a day of game design or any game design studies at the moment. I was just like, well, let's give it a go. I guess they'll tell me if I don't know how to do this thing. But I did know how to do the thing. So then I continued. After 7 years with simulation games, I switched to Veikkaus because I wanted to see a very different game world, both as gambling games are quite different technically. The legal limitations are very different from video games, entertainment games, and also to see how a huge company works because Veikkaus is immense. The game studio isn't huge, but the house itself has like 800 people in the same location. And then after seeing how Veikkaus works, I felt like I needed something a bit more creative. So I wanted to found my own startup, which I did in late 2019. And on that path, I am still on. Then the pandemic came and it's been wild, but here I am. Then I did, during the Colossal Order years, I did a TED talk, and people usually ask me, like, is it a TEDx or like, because there are these smaller events, but no, actually it is the main conference, the main TED event. They just happen to have a theme that fit Colossal Order and the kind of City Skylines especially well, about cities and urban planning and future urban planning. So that was also quite an interesting experience. And nowadays, I wrote it in a bit of a provocative way that I am enabling reading and writing of vampire erotica for all of the world, which basically means that the startup that I'm running now, we're making a platform for authors and readers with gamified elements, and mostly I imagine that vampire erotica will be written on it. I don't know yet. This is my guess, so maybe I'm wrong. But for my last slide, I have my top learnings. We'll go deeper into these, of course, during the panel. But the things that I would recommend to anyone who is considering founding a game company. First of all, be curious. There are things to be found in this world. New kinds of games, new kinds of concepts, apps, entertainment, healthcare, anything. Like you can combine things and find new kind of combinations and make actual new things. You do not have to remake an old thing, although that is fun too, but it's a choice. And the second I put to be brave, because there will always be people who tell you that no, that can't be done, and no, you will never succeed, and all of these things. And they can do their thing and you should do your thing. You know the best. And to make sure that you know the best, you should ask questions. Just think about who would know this problem you're having, who would know the best, and go to them and ask hey, can I ask you a question? And most often the answer will be yes. And please come to me also and ask questions. If you have some kind of questions, I would love to help other people out in founding game companies, so that not everyone has to make the same mistakes that I have made. But mistakes will be made. That's why my fourth bullet point is to have SISU, not just SISU Game Ventures, of course, that's fantastic too, but to be persistent when you make mistakes, when difficult times come. That will always happen in some way, shape, or form. But if you can push through them, that's what makes you a good startup entrepreneur. Yes, this is me. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. That was awesome. It is a good point that you kind of have to be brave enough to ask questions. And maybe the next presenter will also share what kind of questions they could ask from others. But who did we have next, Solip?
It's me.
Oh, it's Samuli. Okay, so Samuli definitely is a person that can maybe give answers to others. So let's see what he has to share.
Let's see. Thank you. So, actually, I started my time with computers already in the early 80s on the Commodore 64. And towards the end of the 80s, I got involved with the demo scene. And back then, there were no game companies in Finland. So in the early 90s, you could say that the early demo scene pioneers were the ones who founded the first game studios. And back when I started officially, which was in 1995, there was only 20 game developers in Finland and one game studio, which was Housemarque. And I started the second game studio, Remedy, in that same year. And as you can see from the slide, there's been quite a few companies I've been involved with as a co-founder. And I can tell you that I have seen the ups and downs of being a games entrepreneur. And I have probably repeated some mistakes, but I hope that I have learned also several lessons over the years, and I'm not repeating those anymore. So one of the big things was, because I'm an entrepreneur, but also 7 years ago, I got a chance to become an investor, which was when Sisu Game Ventures was founded. And so during the last 7 years, I have been both an investor and an entrepreneur at the same time, which has been kind of crazy because I'm sitting on both sides of the table. And I kind of understand the mindset and what each side wants. So it's an interesting advantage to have, and gives me more viewpoints into the whole thing. And I want to be an entrepreneur and not just full-time investor, because through that I will keep my knowledge and skills as fresh as possible. There are so many investors out there who have never actually worked in the game industry, but they have been investing into it for quite some time, and many of them lack the sort of intimate understanding of how you actually make a game, what makes a game fun, and how to actually build up a game studio from the inside. So in any case, through Sisu, I have been involved in about 50 companies so far. There's actually 3 companies here in the panel as well. So it's a small world, of course. With Sisu, we've had 2 stages. We started with Sisu 1, which was, you could call like a prototype. We tried some things, certain way of investing and working with entrepreneurs. And that was successful, actually very successful, so that it was sort of encouraged us to do the second stage. So Sisu 2 was more like a soft launch. And also that went really well. So now we are embarking on the third stage of Sisu, with Sisu 3. And we are currently in the process of raising $50 million. And it's actually going really, really well. We started that work only less than 3 months ago. And usually it takes almost a year to raise a fund. And we are almost done already. And as we all know, the game industry has been a crazy place for many years. It's been growing all the time, and it's the biggest entertainment industry in the world. But now with the pandemic, of course, the silver lining with the pandemic is that people are playing more games. And I think that trend will only increase this year as well. So there are a lot of people who have been hurt in other industries who want to invest into something that actually is pandemic-proof and recession-proof, as has been proven by the game industry. So there's a lot of people who want to invest their money into the game industry. And there's also a lot of companies being formed even during this pandemic. There was a period of time when the pandemic started when there was almost no investor investing anything. They were all saying that, yes, we are investing actively, but that was bullshit. They were just waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And once they realized that this is not going to go away anytime soon, the floodgates opened and investments started again. And there's been actually more investments and M&A activity in the game industry last year than ever before. So this is the golden time to set up your own game studio and start pursuing your dream. That's
fantastic to hear. That's good.
Yes, it is for everyone involved. So as for the lessons, so these are the ones that I distilled down. So one big thing is that you should be humble, meaning that you should know what you are good at and what you are not good at. So just be humble about your personality and your skills. And open-minded. By that I mean that the industry is ever changing, and there have been many transformational shifts and trends and things which have transformed the industry quite a bit. And at which points people have needed to sort of relearn everything again. One huge transition was when free-to-play and mobile games started. So I was one of the people, sort of, because I'm an old dinosaur, so I was like, hey, the old premium model is the best and the only thing. We don't need this shit called free-to-play. And I was fighting against it for some time until I realized that free-to-play is here to stay.
Yeah.
And so I had to sort of give in, and I started learning it, and in the end, I actually started liking it quite a bit. And in fact, all of the exits that we've had in our portfolio so far are from free-to-play companies. And Finland is especially good with mobile games and free-to-play. So I embraced that reality in the end, and that has, been an excellent choice, I would say. But there are also many other trends going forward. One such thing that we are quite excited about at Sisu is cloud gaming. And Sulka, I know, is too. So it's going to be, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Games will be moving into the cloud eventually. Whether it's 3 years or 5 years or whatever amount, we don't exactly know, but we want to be pioneers at Sisu. And we want to always be striving for new things and new horizons, but also invest in the current markets, the proven markets at the same time. One big thing also is work with people you like. Sounds simple, but after being a co-founder in 7 game studios, and I know how things can go really wrong if there's even one person in the company that doesn't really fit, that some people don't like. So have a very thorough sort of hiring and recruiting process, especially in the founding phase. Be extra careful with whom you get into bed with, because those are the people that you will be seeing every day for the next X years, most of the time, even in some cases more than your family. So make sure that they are the people that you want to work with. And I mean mostly chemistry stuff. Of course, skills are important as well, that they shouldn't be overlapping too much, but not too little either. But chemistry is in the end the best thing. And last but not least, obviously, is don't give up, i.e. have Sisu. So obviously from me that has to be said. So I mean, most of the time when you're running a startup, it's not great. There are lots of challenges and problems that you need to be solving on a daily basis. But then once you have those rare, nice, successful moments, they taste so good. So just don't give up and continue following your dream, and good things will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuli. That was super. So the second tip is like team, basically, what also investor would say, right?
Exactly.
Right. So the next presentation comes from... Who was...
Okay.
Stella.
So, yeah, sorry. I was just checking the streamlining and whether it was working correctly. Seems to be okay.
So
next up is Stella Wong.
Let's hear.
I will share the screen. Yeah.
Let's hear from Stella.
All right, I didn't have this kind of summary bullet point, but I have few stories, how I come to Finland and how I started, and just share some of my stories. So hopefully echo with some of you. So I grew up in Asia, but I also grew up in USA. Been working in Spain, Netherlands, and New York, so just couple countries. So it was interesting because before I come to Finland, I was working in advertising industry. I was in game industry. So the whole story happened was kind of serendipity. So one of the things is early stage, I joined like around 10 years ago, 2010, I joined Rovio, but it wasn't kind of the plan. I was actually debating that what would I do after the next stage, after advertising. So we were pitching some idea, and Rovio founder at that time spot us in assembly. Actually, it was my first time in assembly, and asked that if you want to be entrepreneur outside, why don't you be an entrepreneur inside? So it was an interesting experience because I was only visiting from Sweden to Helsinki for a few days during summer. So I remember 2010, I actually landed in Finland in November. So can you imagine that I landed that year was the coldest year of Finland. So when I go to immigration line, it was like snow piling up. And when I told my parents I'm moving to Helsinki, they actually go to the map and scroll, and they say the same latitude to Greenland. Where are you? What are you going to do there? So it was a little bit odd, like why I'm coming here. So that's basically how I started. And I remember I landed in 7 a.m. in the morning. I directly dropped my suitcase. I go to Rovio because it's so exciting. And I'm pretty sure I was the first international expat they hire. So I went to the meeting room, and I remember sitting down with 20 people, all Finnish guy, and also Finnish, and they speak Finnish, and they're all guy. And I remember Petri Javeleta was the founder of, the CEO of Seriously, at the end of the table. And I remember doing that meeting as a foreigner, first thing I learned is when the Finnish is silent, meaning that things are going okay, because I didn't know what was actually how the meeting goes. So basically I stayed in Rovio for way longer than I expected. I stayed there almost 4 years. One of the things I remember that I got the opportunity to be leading the R&D, basically become a product owner. I was very honest with our VP at that time that I was a great creative director. I never done game, but I can try. And I remember I never unpacked for the first 1 year because I wasn't sure if that job was for me. But after a few years of the experience in Rovio, I learned a lot. And that also actually lead to the next stage that instead of moving away from Finland, I was thinking that maybe I would try, do something. Because when I left Rovio, it was 900 people. I was thinking that I want to do something product focused. I want to be, something small project. And the small project actually escalate. And 1 year escalate to many, many years. So, things are sometimes very unexpected. So we kind of start from the company vision. So that's where we want to do social MMO game across platform. And of course, this is kind of company statements, but we also think about how we want to execute that. So the game vision is a sandbox MMO empower creator community, social gaming platform for social generation. So one of the key things is, this is the second lesson I learned that it's like what somebody talk about cloud gaming. As an entrepreneur, you always need to think that what is actually the available space that you can be creative, you can actually tech and also open the market. For us, that was one of the underserved market that we want to do. So it took a while for us to kind of iterate idea to think about how you want to break through this. So I think my first lessons for entrepreneur is to find a vision and make sure that you kind of do a lot of research, but there's a room for innovation. There's a room that, when you are launching this, this is actually the next stage game industry is going to head into. So of course, as a founding member, CEO, you're always very happy and, you have your expectation how you start a company. So this is actually a picture I draw last year that our expectation was not like super smooth, super amazing. Me and Jonas, my co-founder, our expectation just some rock, but eventually we're going to get there. But the reality is actually very, very different from what we actually experienced, that we have the seed round and then you have to build a team, and first few projects fail. And so we were kind of burning fire, and bingo, we actually thought about, okay, we want to focus on social MMO, but immediately we have no money. And we need to try to figure out how we have a proof of concept. Then we done some convertible notes. We tried an error of our first visions. We figure out something works, something doesn't work. And the team decided, okay, this is the vision we believe into. So we would like to pivot. So that's basically how we kind of like a hamster wheel going back and forth on our errors and then going to the second version of our current game. So I think one of the few lessons I learned from your expectation as an entrepreneur to reality is, most people would say that starting, when you look from outside, look very easy, but actually everybody has gone through a really tough time. And actually it's really, really good that if you actually learn the trial and error, a lot of mistake in early stage, because it's going to be very helpful for long term. So there's basically kind of your expectation, but just make sure you know that you're not alone. Everybody's actually in the same place. My third things I learned was a story I learned is it's like what somebody also talked about, a good team. I think the good thing is not about the background, the story. It's about when you guys hit the worst rock button, what would be the other partner will do for you. So now you know that me and Jonas and our CTO were social distance. But still, after so many years working together, after so many times we run into no money, have to change the game, have to do a lot of error and learning, we still stick together and we know that we're going to make it happen. So that's a good thing for you. So make sure that you have that kind of a partners to kind of get through the tough time. Another thing is sometimes you need to find people complementary to you. They're different and they are kind of will tell this, kind of give you the insight that you don't have. Of course, after you have the good team, you start to think about investor or fundraising things. And one of the key things I learned is you always recognize your weakness. You want to know that in your board, in your VC, who can support you to grow you as an entrepreneur. There's no one born as a perfect founder, so you just have to find someone that able to give you that. Couple of things that I learned during my experience that it's very common that before you have one yes, there will be 100 no. Turning maybe to yes take a lot of preparation and work. The third thing is you make sure that the VC is part of your journey and the expectation. You always have to be very honest and also understanding that where we're heading to together. So basically, that's kind of my short story. I hope I didn't take too much time. And yes, we are hiring. If anyone's interested, please join us. Yes.
Thank you very much, Stella. Okay, and the next one is Teemu. Are you ready?
All right, let's do this. Just sharing my screen on my end. All good, Anko?
Yes, everything looks good. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Everything is live.
Perfect. So, hey everybody, also from me. And I'm coming from a slightly different angle today. So I've been part of many games companies, but today I actually have a technology company called MetaPlay. So like 2 lines of me, my background is that before this technology company, my claim to fame was PlayRaven. We did strategy games on mobile, big MMO style, kind of persistent games and so on, trying to expand what kinds of games are available, etc. Before that, I was at Vuga shipping their first mobile games. And I was actually just trying to look through some of the ones that I've shipped recently. And there's quite a variety, even one with the EVE Online brand together with CCP. And in my free time, I've been doing a lot of IGDA work. So got a lifetime award from them a couple of years back for, I guess, like 11, 12 years of kind of organizing that community.
I hope it's not a life expectation, Mark. Life achievement, yeah.
I know. My parents keep telling me about that. But anyway, so then after PlayRaven, we sold Rovio, and I was kind of thinking what to do next. And as Samuli was saying earlier, games are doing fantastic at the moment. So even if you look at this 1-year graph of a particular ETF, like an index fund tracking a lot of games companies, you can barely see the pandemic in there. So games as a business is in a fantastic place. But paradoxically, as Stella was just saying, starting a games company, it's not that easy. So there's so many hills you have to climb, and you're kind of plausible to die on any which one of them. And that obviously can be a lot of fun, but it can also be overwhelming. And you can see that just in the sheer number of games companies that fail, games that maybe ship but don't find success, and maybe teams and so on that struggle to move beyond that first game. I've also got some gaming investments, and it's kind of interesting to see that from an investor point of view, the second album problem, as many call it, and so on. Like, how do you actually go through this adventure? So with our current endeavor, the way I look into it was there's this array of games that I want to make, and a lot of them revolve around persistence, people meeting each other and playing together and all that stuff. So I'm a huge fan of MMOs and team games and so on. But making any one of these, there's such an array of problems you have to solve to be able to ship, right? And I found myself unable to just even prototype those games because the problem space was too large. It was too much for a small team to quickly go and prototype. I would have to raise a lot of money and hire a full team and make a company just to have a stab. So my mission was, how do I take some of these problems and just make game development easier so that I could even, one day get to making those games. And that led to me and my couple other friends founding a new technology company, which is specifically about solving the backend problem. So in like 2 sentences, what we do is that we take your Unity project and we take the game servers and we take the cloud infrastructure and we take the tools, the dashboards and everything else that you use once the game is live to manage your game. And we try to make that for you, and that's the tool set that you would use to ship games. So essentially, the same way you use Unity for shipping the client side, you use an engine, so you wouldn't have to do all of that yourself. We kind of want to make that engine, although the right word is a platform, we want to make that platform for the backend. So again, you can focus on games, because we kind of figured out if we were going to make a games company, this is what we need to do anyway. So let's try to focus on this problem and let's try to make money while at it. So meaning, instead of making this technology and making a game at the same time, how about we just make this technology and try to make it as good as we get and see if there's a business in it. So kind of that's what we're doing. And 3 things to me stand out at what is different about this endeavor than, say, my previous games companies. So first one is that, as I was just saying, this was really born out of the need for focus. So to really master a game genre, to really master making a good product, you have to dedicate so much time on it and like just stay on it to become, one of the best in the world. Because as you kind of know, or at least I'm guessing everybody in the panel is painfully aware, it's not enough that you make something good. You have to make it better than the competition. You have to make the best game in the genre rather than, an okay game in the genre, generally speaking. So now by choosing not to make a game, but by choosing to solve one of the problems of making a game, we think we have a really good stab at being the best in our domain, right? The second thing that we're doing, which is quite different, happy to be challenged by some of the people in the panel maybe on this, we are fully bootstrapped, meaning there's 0 external investors, no angels, no venture capitals, and we're not even raising. So what that
wow,
changes,
that's very, very different from so many other companies. Yeah,
that's not the trend at the moment. So the reason we're doing that, and my previous companies have raised over 10 million in investments and so on. So it's something that is familiar to me. So it's not about that, but instead this was a conscious choice that now that we are in our domain of building this tool or the product, by not having VCs, we have no pressure to scale. So there's nobody looking for an exit, or there's nobody saying that we should, be on a certain trajectory of growth to meet, the needs of the investors. And the reason we did that is because we know it's going to take a long time, potentially, for us to master this thing. And the best way to do that is to stay very small, control our costs, and get it right, instead of directly piling in the problems of hiring a lot of staff and going international and having a huge sales team and so on. So we are staying small to master something and then potentially go the VC route afterwards. And sort of as a function of this decision, but equally it was a not conscious decision regardless of bootstrapping, was to say, all right, when we found the company on day 0, meaning on the very first day, we want to have revenue, money coming in. And this is a little bit more difficult for games companies, but it's not impossible. But it completely changes the dynamic of how we do things. So instead of making, say, a game for, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, then shipping and hoping that you get money someday, hoping that you hit close enough that you can get to money, we're saying, right, we need to get money on day 0 so that we can validate if we're doing the right thing. And what this has led to us is that our first fiscal year has been profitable, which is obviously nice, not having investors. It's nice to have some profits to pay salaries. But unsurprisingly, we've had so many learnings kind of following what is worth paying for people. So for us, it's obviously that we have customers who pay us to deliver tech. So we get immediate feedback of, did we deliver the right features? Is this worth it? Do people want to pay for this? If not, let's fix it. And so the same thing obviously goes for live games, where you can kind of make new features and see if people want to pay money in a free-to-play game, for example, for it. But I guess this is the analog of early access and, releasing very early with your game to find out if there is an audience. And I guess just the biggest takeaway there is that now by doing these choices, we're able to have that iteration speed on the product market fit, which I never had with my previous companies, which always had those 1 to multiple years of development cycles to learn that, there was like a fundamental problem with the design. Oops, let's do that again. So with those kind of 3 things, there's way more to it, but that defines how we're doing things this time around. Cheers.
Thank you. I should have counted how many times you said money, but that's basically what the startup is all about. So, yeah, thank you, Teemu. And I think we still have. Let's have.
Yes, finally, but not least, we have Sulka.
Yep.
Are you ready, Sulka?
Yep. Let's see. I'll share my screen. I guess, do you see me?
Just wait a small second. For some reason I see Solib on the presentation mode, so I don't know why it is so.
At least like zooms this tells me I'm screen sharing. I guess
okay, there. Now we have you. Okay, cool. Okay. Go ahead. Cool.
All right, awesome. So hey, I'm Sulka. So my background, like I'll tell a bit more about like some of these companies, but I started in mid-90s originally and spent the first few years of my career working on multimedia CD-ROMs and websites. And so like the Razorfish Grey is basically from that era. Actually dabbled in like advertising as well. So interesting to hear Stella actually did this as well. And those parts were actually hugely educational in that we were making things directly for customers, and like making things for customers where they actually hire you for a project is very different form of work from what games companies typically do. But then a couple of friends founded Sulake, and I joined there originally actually to make a MMO with the Finnish team, so we called it Urjala. Wanted to use like Finnish mythology, but we killed that very quickly in favor of Habbo, and then founded games and 3D printed toys company called Makilab. Then with next, and I'm currently at Mainframe. And these were all really different experiences. So Sulake, like I was there for about 10 years, and we needed to start innovating on the free to play, or like we used the free to play model from the start around 2000. And as somebody said, that like we were one of the crazy folks that a lot of people thought that like this business model is never going to work. But we actually and Habbo actually ended up being much bigger than a lot of people realized. So I recall that biggest we were making more than 50 million a year in revenue by selling pixel furniture. And I saw the company grow. Like I joined it at the less than 10 people on board, and then we grew to like close to 300, and then needed to scale down, and that was hugely painful. And so the product changed during 10 years, and obviously 10 years, like it's a really big change in the company, and it was really educational to actually see how the culture changes over time as you grow bigger. Makilab was interesting where like we wanted to combine physical toys, like we basically printed these dolls and some of the other items based on things people customized inside digital games that they played mostly mobile. And like, so again, like kickstarting a new team, like actually needed to figure like really complicated problem space of like creating technology and games and the physical side, and actually doing this in London where like we were running a startup outside of home, like and crazy amount of things that we needed to juggle and like wanted to juggle at the same time. And then that led to like me moving back and working on like at Next Games, where I was the executive producer and lead designer on like a couple of the Walking Dead games. And we're again like actually like shifting over to making some of the most violent games that are available in App Store, where you shoot zombies in the face, was a cool change. Very different from like having made these like really kid-friendly, like colorful, peaceful games. And like with Next as well, like I joined before we had shipped the first game, ended up shipping the couple games, a couple games there. seeing how the culture of that company changed, and like what were the transitions over time, like, and the company IPOing in the meantime, like, was huge. So currently at Mainframe, I'm the design director, working on the like the product. We're in stealth mode. We haven't really talked about that, and it's been really cool. And as said in the introduction, like half the team is actually in Reykjavik, in Iceland, and now during the COVID era, the fact that we've been actually hiring people in like remotely, and like we're actually hired a couple of people in Australia. So like seeing how suddenly we get this like online collaboration within the team, and how we can actually spread the team globally, like having understood that like people can actually work from whatever, has been like super educational. So the three things I wanted to share. So the first one is kind of the going with the journey metaphor. So when you found a startup, you're forming this, or like you're going on a path and ultimately want to succeed. And the thing to do is you should understand what it is that you're actually after. Where there's like from the outside, like when talking to a lot of people, looks like the outsider view kind of is this like, okay, like you just pick a game and then something happens and like you're turned to be a profitable operation. And in reality, there's a huge amount of decisions that the founding team should really talk about and get a common understanding over, such as the like once we've actually done the things and grown the company, like are we still small or big, and how many games were we actually aiming to launch, and like what do we really want to focus on? So what are the competencies that we actually need to have within the team, and like what's the monetization model? So like I've seen people argue over the monetization like long time after the company has been founded, and that's just silly. Yeah, like Teemu said that they made a very conscious decision over like the going to market basically on day zero, which is fundamentally different from some companies maybe making actually the conscious choice of developing a game for years. And that really should be a conscious choice, where the thing you want to kind of avoid is going onto the path and then like diverging like on the direction multiple times before you actually get to the point where you have succeeded, simply because you actually didn't have these discussions. So you really want to have this kind of like method to the madness, where there are things that you want to prove along the way to actually get to the point where you want to be, and everything you actually choose to do should be some way of proving the theory of like here's where we want to go. So there shouldn't be anything like, or just like getting like landing on a point without actually having made that decision. You should actually have those discussions and make decisions that are based on like knowing where you want to go. The second is product vision, which where you really want to have a vision over what is it that you're building. And actually, like, it was great to see Stella actually share some of the vision that they've been like pitching at Dazzle Rocks, where the vision that you do should like, it can take like any shape or form, but it should be internally consistent. So like make sure that you don't actually conflict yourself as you're presenting this and thinking about this. It should be in shape with kind of like or in line with the shape of success, or like where you actually want to go. You need to write this down. It can be a pitch deck. It can be like one paragraph or text. It can be a mission statement, or it can be punch pictures. But it should be something you can actually share with everybody in the team. And by team, I mean like the founding team and everybody you hire, and the investors if you actually choose to go for investment. So something that is actually like you really share, and you need to update this as needed. So like if you learn something and actually like part of this is invalidated, make sure it's updated, and then communicate this all the time. For the team, like even yourself, probably will need reminded. Okay, like here's the thing that we're after. And so one of the things we've been doing now in Mainframe, we do these periodic planning meetings. And actually, like the slides that I've been using to communicate some of the vision now internally, they're actually the same things that we presented about 1.5 years ago when to the investors. So they haven't really fundamentally changed, because we're still after the same thing. and that's really good. So we actually kind of means that like we still believe in that thing, but the team needs to be reminded constantly, like here's the thing that we actually really want to do and the player experience that we actually want to provide. And if you have that and you still keep believing in that, it's a good thing. And it's going to motivate the people and like keep everybody focused. And the last is I almost like captioned this team, but I think that is kind of misleading. Where what you really are doing is you're building culture, and as you hire people, you need to really understand that a great team is fundamentally different from a group of great individuals. And like I don't usually use sports analogies at all, but the like when listening to and like looking hockey, like one of the ongoing themes seems to be like whenever like Finland and Russia have been playing is the Finnish team really plays together, and they might not have as good players as the Russian teams typically do because they just get the superstars. But the superstars might not play together too well. And now like you have this collection of individuals who are really good, but because they don't collaborate in a way that actually makes like the team perform at best and they don't support each other, they actually end up being worse than the team that they're playing against. And the thing you really need to do as a startup and like the culture you need to build is people need to trust each other, because the trust is everything ultimately. And like when the hard times land, as mentioned in previous discussions or like talks, the entire team needs to be actually like know that they have their like the back of the other members of the team. And so you want to have this like a really close knit team of like of everybody you hire and build this. And if this fails, you can actually like the company culture will start to diverge and get to a point where like people will actually start feeling that they're being like dictated on like what they need to do. And if your culture kind of collapses and people start feeling bad, they will disappear and your entire company is going to fall. So what you really need is a way to build a team like where everybody can actually be who they are, be really comfortable about sharing ideas and like building the products and like being able to like contribute the best that they possibly can. And this is something that takes a huge amount of effort from you. So don't underestimate this as somebody who needs to be able to like pick the people. So be like spend as much time as possible on making sure that people you have a team that is a good fit and people really enjoy working with each other. And I guess that's me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was about to ask that of the slide that had the hammer and a nail. How does the metaphor of when you have a hammer, everything is a nail comes together with you talking about the team?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the things I was thinking there is so we as human have this tendency of like when things start to go bad, it's very like natural for us to like start looking for like how do we increase control over something.
Yeah.
And one of the things like like when Supercell, for example, has been talking about the way they've been building the culture in the company, is that they've actually built this organization where the individual teams get to make the decisions and they have huge amount of trust in the teams being able to solve whatever problems come forward. So instead of like, and they've been really resisting like adding control. So I know the teams have sometimes been going through harder phases, but there's never apparently been this moment of like, okay, like now people who run the company, so Ilkka basically saying to the teams, okay, like I'm going to take over because you didn't do this thing, as opposed to basically still trusting the teams. Is hugely important to do that.
Yeah.
I've also seen the bad side of this where like suddenly the management loses faith in the teams, and once you get to that point, like if anybody loses trust, you basically, it's incredibly difficult to recover this, and you just don't want to get there.
Yeah. That's a very good lesson. I'm sure that the other panelists are also joining in chiming with this. I've heard it so many times that the team matters, and you all also covered that one way or another. So before we go to questions that Solib has prepared, I have at least one thing. One note at least from your presentations, like money was mentioned many times, challenge, change, then sisu as well, maybe sharing with others and asking questions. And then I could see this kind of a intertwining between your companies, that you have connections to each other. Also CCP was mentioned a couple of times in different presentations, so this all is kind of interesting. But so how do you kind of, when the team matters, how do you actually, what are the ways to find people to work with you? Like, you already have a lot of experience, so maybe we can start from that, but you can also try to tell couple of pointers for those that don't yet have the network.
Good point, yeah.
So whoever wants to take on this point, maybe
Back in the day, when we still were able to meet physically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember those days?
Well, if you can also add where we can meet people now also would be nice. But first, do share us. Where have you met your founding teams? Like,
yeah, that's good.
How did you came up with this team, and how did you build the trust with the team that you have right now?
Many teams have actually met individual new team members at IDGA events. That has been one of the most common places. And of course, there's in addition to Aalto, there are several other schools in Finland that provide game education. So usually the game education is shaped so that you actually make games and even like virtual game companies during your studies. So it's not uncommon that you take your classmates and start a game studio with them. So at least those things.
Yeah, like meetings with the community, like ITDA, and then the school. Stella, how did you, was it from a previous company that you found your co-founder and other team members?
I would give a little bit different perspective because as you know that I didn't grow up in Finland. So also starting the company to this journey was not a plan. It was kind of, okay, we're going to break through next things. So all of a sudden we're here. So one of actually my early challenge, I remember two things. My first GDC when I was in San Francisco, I remember that our meeting was 10 hours per day. And afterward, everybody, all the Finnish people, they have this evening invitation. And I look at Jonas, we're just standing in the middle of San Francisco. There's no invitation for us. And we were thinking like, this is a little bit sad at that time because we just started. We didn't have as much network and we didn't think about to start the company, and we didn't plan that when we were in Rovio time. So it was a little bit kind of building the network. And then ever since that time, Jonas and I, we did a lot of effort. For example, that I think my first time meeting with somebody was when I started a company. And I remember he was talking about his remedy time. I actually go to Google and actually read everything about the history. So I started to kind of recognize each company, who is the CEO, what do they do? And every time when there's an event, I would try to find time to talk to them. And then after a few years, I think now not only we have invitation, we're also able to talk about hard things. And also I was able to ask advice. So during these years, I think I have built kind of friendship and network inside the game industry that I can cross-reference, calling someone, hey, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? Because my history in Finland was not so long. So that's kind of one perspective from from foreigner or from a person who didn't have that long history. Another thing is I realized that when you talk to Finnish people that, hey, this is something I'm not sure, this is my challenge, I need some advice from you. Typically, they are really friendly, especially if they have one drink. They're really, really open. They will
so nobody's drinking now.
No, they will tell you the whole story about different things. So I think it's a very nice community to start. It's just your first step. You need to kind of be strategically thinking that what you don't know, what you need to learn. So I remember that I remember my funniest joke I ever made in Rovio was when I grew up in as a Nintendo world. So I don't know Happo Hotel. So in Rovio, everybody was talking about Happo Hotel. Then all of a sudden, I raised my hand, talked to Peter Vespakat, and Petri Javledo was there. Why we are talking about hotel business? I'm really confused. What are we talking about? So it is a little bit embarrassing for me. So I actually spent a lot of time to read through like what Housemarque does, what Remedy does.
Yeah.
You really go through all the history, who was involved, what happened. So it's a whole new thing. So you need to put some homework into it. And the last thing is it's a little bit off for foreigner because I think most Finnish guys, they look similar at the first time when I came here. So actually I took a lot of LinkedIn photo and I tried to memorize this group of people have worked together. So one time I was actually in a conference, I tried to kind of know more. Like I think at that time Grand Crew was starting. I tried to understand that who used to work in Grand Crew and all the things. And so I was actually looking at a photo and I'm not so tall. So there was a guy behind me that, are you looking for Marcus? And I was like, how do you know? So there's a few things that as a newbie or as like a foreigner, it is some work, but generally the community is really welcoming. It's very friendly as well. So just try to think about what you want to know. Yeah.
That's very impressive. Like a lot of people say that they don't remember the names, so I think that this community is also very forgiving. But yeah, Carolina is raising a hand.
Yeah, I could maybe add that things that were not yet mentioned that I felt are really good ways to also meet potential team members or co-founders. Game jams, for example. I really love this, especially when I was at Colossal Order when we did like huge PC game projects. Like each project took years. So for me, it was very refreshing to just go for a weekend somewhere, make some tiny game, and maybe not even finish. Just meet people, work with different teams, different people, just do something else. And it was also a really good way to meet people when you're all tired, making a game, eating pizza in a small enclosed space. So totally valid. And another sort of network that I have found really kind of beneficial and interesting is actually the tabletop role-playing people. I'd say that just pulling numbers out of my Stetson is like about 80% of game designers in Finland have designed or worked with tabletop role-playing games. And that's an interesting...
Or some kind of role-playing game, at least.
Yeah,
like I call it sometimes like role-playing math that dominates Finnish designers.
Yeah, but it's really interesting that there is some kind of a connection, even though tabletop role-playing games are quite that's very much a hobby because it is quite difficult to actually make a living out of it. So I guess then we all end up doing video games to actually get money. So
money.
Just wanted to mention these.
I want to maybe just drop in there as well. Fully agree with everything you said. And actually, Stella, what you said made me cry a little bit because I think I was organizing that GDC event. And, I would give you an invite right now if I had some.
No, it was years ago. Now, I remember 2 years, the last GDC, I was joking with Jonas that I think we have grown a lot because we used to have no calendar invite. Now we are like back to back, we need to split ourselves. So it's a growing process. So it has changed a lot.
Perfect. That's a good KPI. And also, I think everything that you guys have been saying, it comes back to trust, right? So it's not just where do you go and how do you meet people. It's actually how do you build trust with people so that you're confident in doing this weird thing with them, which is equivalent to getting married or buying a house together. So it doesn't really matter what you do as long as it lets you really dive into the other people and kind of decide, do you trust your company with them? Like if you give them your hopes and dreams, will they carry it?
That's very poetic. Teemu, that's so poetic.
There you go.
That's beautiful.
Or terrifying, either way.
Terrifying, yeah.
So in a more kind of hopeful, open way, if you think of it like that, then you actually have a lot of options that I've met my co-founders mostly through introductions, because I would go and ask other people that I know, describing what I want to do, and then asking them, like, who would they trust? Who should I meet somebody? Like, please help me out. And then that way, when you get referrals in the network, it's easier to build that trust. It's easier to put in the effort to scout the other person when somebody else tells you, hey, I like this guy, maybe you would do too. And then I guess for many people in the stream, the question is, well, how do I get somebody to recommend me, right? Well, IGDA, that would be fantastic. And barring that, basically just interacting with people, right? Like showing your games and being there.
Yeah, I think that like it's interesting how Teemu you chime in with Stella, even though both you don't, like Stella was saying that since you're a foreigner you didn't have these networks, but I think it's a struggle for all of us, even though you would be born with these people. So what I tend to say to my students that it's not just your portfolio of your work, like drawings or coding or software that you've built that is your portfolio. But it's also your reputation with other people. So whether you've been in a game jam and you were not really performing very nicely with others, that might give a negative tone to your reputation, or that you were a really nice person in a game jam and you were able to kind of motivate others in the team, that builds up to your reputation, and then other people might refer you. Sulka, can you kind of comment on that?
Yeah. I can also see like Carolina was also raising.
Yeah,
I can see a lot of people are already having like comments coming up. So Sulka first, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just quickly, basically on the game jams, I think there were questions about the how to get into the industry. So the other reason to actually go to game jams is that if you don't have that much industry experience in terms of work, but you come with the CV telling that you been to these 20 game jams and have the list of games that you actually made there, like that's actually a huge implication that or the indication that you probably are quite passionate about games. And if you can talk about those games, even though they probably obviously didn't make any money, but it's a very good way of proving skill in the industry and very good way of learning skill. Because the couple days locked in with the pizzas and people, it's actually a great way to actually really drill down to how do I make something that proves some mechanic or is fun in a very short period of time. And it's hugely valuable to have that skill. So when I've been at least hiring people who are coming to the industry, hiring people who are showing this talent based on the game jams has always been I can't remember any one of them ever disappointing in terms of what they actually do at work.
Perfect. Carolina, were you saying the same things, or was there something else?
Kind of. I really agree with Sulka in this, and I'd kind of really want to emphasize that in game jams, it's not about the game that you make or if it is finished or anything like that. It's all about teamwork. All the tools, we can learn new tools, we can learn 3ds Max, anything, Photoshop, Unity. That's usually not the problem. Of course, it's excellent if you find someone who already has the skills and knows how to use the tools, but that's a secondary problem. Finding the people who play well together, who kind of make a team and make the culture that Sulka was talking about, that's really the thing. And that's why, at least for me, I have made mistakes of not getting to know my potential teammates well enough, and I highly, highly, highly recommend to everyone that if you find someone who is trying to be very helpful, ask around. There might be some other reason than that they actually want to help. So just go and ask people hey, would you like to work with them? And at least for me, I don't even need to know the details. If a person who I trust says that they would not want to work with this person, and I might even ask, do you think I would like to work with this person? If they still say no, and if a couple of people say the same to me, they most likely no.
Oh, they're so harsh also at the same time.
It is, but people don't say it lightly, of course. No, and just that for a founder, finding out that you just don't have the right chemistry with someone, if you can avoid spending months or years finding out just that I just can't work with this person, we're too different. Our ways of working just don't fit together. Even though, kind of like in the hockey example, that even both are as individuals extremely talented and great at what they do. If they can't work together, it doesn't mean that either one of them is bad at what they do. Yeah. They just can't perform.
The chemistry doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating and just that's a waste of time and everyone's well-being and happiness. So the earlier you can find that out, excellent. And then The easiest way to fix that situation is to avoid it completely. It can be fixed later, but that's more difficult. So ask around.
Yeah, I think that there's like a lot of people in stream are asking about where do I find these things called game jams. You can't share links on our chat currently, but let's say globalgamejam.org, and Solip might have a couple of words of the advertisement. She even has the t-shirt. I don't know if you can see it without the green screen breaking in, but yeah, it's kind of coming through a little bit. But yeah, Solip is involved with the Finnish Game Jam organization as well, and like I have been. So, but let's not make the entire chat about game jams, even though I would really love that to happen. But another question before we go to the student questions and audience questions is that since you've been with other companies and maybe forming so many other game startups, like what did you think before making the first company? What was something that you kind of now after forming your company or companies, it has completely, like what was your mistake of thinking something would happen and then it didn't? So maybe if you're able to share some of that.
Yeah, I only have one sentence. I think typically if you think too much, you wouldn't start.
Right.
And I think and typically if you think too much too ahead and too much calculation, you wouldn't start because it's you're kind of infinite thinking about what if.
Yeah.
So for my first company and still my first one, I didn't think too much. I think Samuli probably can verify me if I'm right or wrong.
Samuli, it would be really interesting to hear what did you think like way back when you started your first company?
Well, back then there weren't too many people to choose from to be co-founders, and I was so young and inexperienced. There was no game education, there was nothing, and so we were just sort of winging it. And we just had some random, well, semi-random group of demo scene people who knew how to program and make graphics, and perhaps maybe some game design also. And we just put a group of people together in the first company. And within the next 2 years, I had to throw 2 of those founders out. And that was a super painful experience. But it came down to me as because I was the managing director. I had to carry the responsibility because I had also sanctioned having those certain people in the group, but they were becoming counterproductive and they were poisoning the whole company and the culture, and things were not happening, and we had to get rid of them. My biggest mistake though was I let that continue way too long, and I only started talking about it openly with those people, much later than I should have. So if you end up founding a company with someone that you know that you can't work with, you should open that discussion as soon as possible and fix it. And usually it means, and in 95% of cases, that person has to leave. But do not burn bridges if you can avoid it. So be very honest and open about it. And then usually people are sensible because this is a small industry. People don't want to lose their reputation. They don't want to be difficult. They don't want to damage someone else's things unnecessarily. So usually it goes really well, but sometimes it doesn't. I have been in the courts also about these things, and they can get really, really ugly in some situations.
Oh dear, it's like a painful life of game developers because it's all about humans that when you make games. It's all about also tech problems and other design and graphics and so on, but so much is about people. Right. That's what I hear you saying constantly.
I could maybe hinge on this because when I founded a company, I thought that I would be mainly solving tech problems and kind of game design problems, but that is definitely not the case. Like it's teams, humans, especially with the pandemic, because we ended up in a situation where the pandemic hit us just when we had put together a team. So people didn't really know each other. So the trust was not yet there. And then everyone had to go working remotely and just video calls, and the world is in like what kind of a state, and everyone feels anxious and just that was really bad for the team culture, and just the fact that we had to do a lot of work of making sure that people know each other and build the trust, because it doesn't happen on its own. Maybe in a very small team, but as soon as you have like 2 people working on one thing and 2 people working on another thing, and they don't talk much, unless you specifically organize like some kind of like coffee breaks, tea times, or weekly meetings, it just doesn't happen. So trust and humans, us beautiful, different, variable humans, like that's what I found out, that it isn't so much about the game or even the tech. It's about humans and teams.
I definitely want to actually continue on that. That's exactly what I was thinking. That one of the things that I like to say is that games are like a deterministic function of the people working on it plus the process that they're using to work together, right? So if you think that this is going bad, like Sulka was saying earlier, if you lose the trust one way or another that this is going well, then the only thing you can do is either change the process or change the humans. Like no matter of goodwill is going to make it good. So to the kind of original question of something that I didn't think about back in the day, that I definitely do a lot more right now, was I feel like everybody who wants to make games, they feel like they have a good plan, right? They feel like I've got my people around me and I want to make this game, it's the best game, and it's going to be amazing, and this is how I'm going to sell it and so on, because you kind of have intuition about those things as a game developer. You're passionate about it.
It's always the best idea because it's your idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's the best idea and it's your idea. It's like a double. But I find that almost 0% of new people founding companies have this innate understanding of what kind of games can they as a group make. So what kind of overlap there is between their ability to deliver something and the plan. And usually the overlap is shockingly small. So then you end up pivoting or maybe dying. So I feel like, and I see that not as companies, but as game teams, even in like game teams inside big companies like Supercell or whatever, they try to make a game, but then they realize that this particular team cannot make this game, even though the idea is brilliant. And sometimes maybe the game gets handed off to another team, or the team gets reformed around the idea. And that's like a discussion that never happens with a new company for some reason.
Maybe I see the effect that is happening there a bit is kind of, or what I imagine might be happening is kind of the grass is greener on the other side. So kind of the games that I generally like and play, to me, they seem a bit boring. It's like, I've seen a million of these, but that's because I play them a lot. So like, for example, when I came to Colossal Order as a game designer, I was like, well, I don't know why they chose me, but well, let's see. A game about cities. Like, yeah, I know this stuff. And only later, like a few years ago, I realized that I have most likely played a lot more of like Sierra city building games like Caesar and Pharaoh, Zeus, all of these, like tons. Like that's one of the reasons why for me it seemed like, well, I can just wing it and just make some kind of a city game. Like that's no problem. And I had this understanding of how these generally work and what is the enjoyment. And because I wasn't trying to make something totally new and never before seen, I was just like, well, I know what a good city game generally looks like. I'll make one of those. It made me avoid the thing of like wanting to design something that looks fantastic and mysterious to me, because sometimes it looks fantastic and mysterious because I don't know how it works. And then I might not be able to design one.
Yeah, I guess one of the learning from me is especially founding a startup is, like if you found a startup, you better like running companies, because so as a game designer, I actually the last couple of weeks I had the time to design something. Typically, most of the time I spend is something completely different. So as a startup founder, basically assume that it's going to be more about everything other than actually working on the game. And if you get to work on the game, that's really good. But you need to actually be really good at the other parts of the company running and building the culture and whatever you have to do to organize it efficiently enough to actually have time working on the product itself. And
how many
so
people there are in your team now, Sulka, in the mainframe industries team?
Can't remember the exact number. We're about 30 people now.
About 30. How about others? Like, what are the sizes of the companies?
We have 8 people.
And Teemu,
28. Like what? When did you hire that much?
Teemu, how many of you?
We're 7, and we actually just signed the 8th person as well.
8 as well. Stella?
We're 19.
19. And Samuli, which company are we even talking about?
Well, at Sisu we are 6.
That's Sisu, yeah, okay. As investors.
And entrepreneurs.
And entrepreneur, of course, yeah. Cool. So yeah, Sulka, what was the, like, if we think about it, you have had such a long history and also formed a company or been a co-founder in another country. Now that you've been together with this like Icelandic-Finnish collaboration, what are the things that you try to avoid as thinking or doing as a mistake that you've done before? Maybe you didn't do any mistakes, but like how do you think about now what you've learned and what you actually put in use?
Well, I guess like we probably mentioned a lot of that. So communication is something that I guess you can't just emphasize enough, or ensuring that you just like talk about everything that is being done so that everybody's in sync, and actually establish the fundamentals were actually one of the first things I did already maybe like about 1.5 years ago is this. I collected kind of claims from the team or statements over like what do they think we should be doing, and then made a poll to the entire founding team saying that do you believe this is true? And then on the ones that where we kind of like found okay, like now there's some like disconnection between like some of the people are saying that this is true and some of the people are saying that no, it's not going to go this way. And then we talked about those particular things over like why is it that we don't actually like believe in the exact same thing. So like making sure that you're actually like aligned and you can't get into the alignment without actually like talking about everything, and that also like includes taking the core fundamental assumptions and actually verbalizing those out. Because something that's really easy for us to do is kind of assume that something is true and then start basing a company on that assumption, and never actually talking about the assumption with the other founders. And then finding a year later that like you're assuming something completely different from somebody else, and like those assumptions being different might actually mean that you were aiming for a fundamentally different thing, like in the end. So part of what I was saying, like with the like what is the shape of success, like you really should know what is it that you're aiming for, and then like actually like break it down into like all the assumptions in the world, and then like have the talk, like are you assuming the same things, and that's a good way actually like really discovering like here's the things that like I think is true but you think completely is not true, and and that discussion can teach you so much.
So talking about the elephant in the room, since I thought initially that this would be like just talking about IGDA networking and how to get the people in a normal world, but Sulka, how is it going? Is it going against you, or is it for your benefit now that the COVID is kind of pushing us to the distance working mode? So how is it with the mainframe industries that you like? How do you do the communication with without office meeting?
Yeah. So weirdly, for us actually, like almost immediately after like going to remote mode, the team agreed that they actually improved the communications. Were like so before COVID, we had like video meeting like between the like offices where you just went to a meeting room and there was like giant TV and you were kind of talking to the TV. But that really breaks the social interaction with people. And suddenly when everybody's on the laptop and you're actually talking to the camera, and it equalizes so that like everybody's like equally present, and we actually have this basically like everybody has to have the video cameras on at all times in all the meetings so that you get the body language. And it somehow like actually made sure that now suddenly like the communication, like everybody were equally engaged every time you actually were talking to everybody. And so for us actually it seems to work really well. And interestingly, like it's led to, like as I mentioned earlier, like us starting to hire more people across the planet, basically, because like we kind of like take it for granted that we assume that like the distance doesn't really mean that much in terms of communication, where we can have these things. And secondly, I guess the importance of online collaboration tools that really allow people to do things at the same time, that's become even more interesting, important than before, where things like the fact that Google Docs allows multiple people to open the same document at the same time, and then the meeting can actually be where you actually typing stuff in, the other people are typing into the same document that you can directly collaborate, has been really good. And we now recently, we adopted Miro, which is this online graphing whiteboarding thing, and it's the best thing since soft toilet paper. Where suddenly you can actually it's very easy to do visual presentation things and actually author things together, because again, if somebody opens the same document, you see their arrow pointer, and you can author the same doc at the same time. So they've done an incredible job about reducing the friction of being able to collaborate on the same document and being able to represent the information visually.
So in a way, a good thing has come out of the distance working situation, or force into that. Others in the panel, I think Stella is raising a hand, and there is a cat raising his tail.
I really agree with the Suka. I think one thing we did it quite well was, starting from COVID-19, we have this kind of always camera on when we have it. So we have one Zoom channel always on for the whole working hours. So if anyone wants to drop in to feel like you're really close to colleague. So right now, for example, that we still have 70% people always stay there and just chatting, talking to each other. We also have this kind of queue policy that, when you go to lunch or when you check out, just send an emoji and say goodbye. So, it gave a feeling that we still have the routine. We did some survey end of last year. I think those are the small things, but changed a lot of mentality. For example, we often hear some company people get frustrated about looking for colleague. Some people they kind of want to have more teamwork, but people are in a different schedule. So we kind of try to make sure that we have this routine also for the team. So when the work is off, then work is off. So that was actually working quite well for us. Another interesting thing is I think one funny things I observed is after COVID-19, I think even our tech team draw pretty well. The drawing skill has been improving, showing your concept. And so I think during this time, we constantly reminding people that we need to have patience, and we're also mainframe growing at this moment. So always, every month, there are new people. You need to kind of ask funny questions. For example, one day we do the introduction of a new joiner. We said that you cannot talk about your role, but you need to describe it. So that was actually quite fun exercise too. So basically, I think as a leadership, even though you're really heading forward, there are a lot of deadlines, especially startup, we have a lot of deadline, and you're actually growing phases all the time. You need to kind of pause and sit back and think that what's the temperature of your team? Do they need, how are they doing? And what kind of activity you should actually do during this time? So I think that's a very important thing when you are growing the team and also during this tough time.
Yeah. How has it affected Samuli and Teemu, since you're kind of also daily things is to meet other companies? How is it going with COVID?
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you. So there was, of course, a little moment of adjustment when the COVID started, and but eventually, when we realized that this is how it's going to be, it's actually made things a lot easier. I mean, of course, it's from an investor point of view, it's kind of scary if you are investing into a team that you've never physically met. But we have a principle in Sisu that we only invest in teams where they are sort of coming through our trusted network. So we already know someone in the team, or we know an investor or some other person from the game industry who knows the team really well. So we don't have to blindly invest into some team somewhere that nobody knows. So that's helped us quite a bit. But I've heard from many VCs who don't have these kinds of networks that they actually find it very scary to invest millions in teams. They don't actually even know if they are from the country that they claim they are. So it's kind of a funny situation, but it has accelerated things also. So we can meet a lot of teams quickly, and the teams can meet us. They don't have to travel anywhere anymore. So in the past, when I was an entrepreneur and I was raising funding for my companies, I needed to travel to London, to Stockholm, all the way to the US or Asia. And it took many weeks to go through all of the investors, because if you didn't go and meet them face to face, they didn't take you seriously. Mm-hmm. You had to do it, and it was a lot of wasted time. So.
And it's so different. Like the last investment that we went through with came from actually the office building that was next to our office building, and during the pandemic, we still have not met live with these people. So, and that's good. We're happy. They are happy. Everyone is happy. But it's a huge difference.
Yeah, very different world. Teemu, how is your company doing with the COVID?
Yeah, so we're actually doing so well that it's a little bit embarrassing. And it comes down to a couple of factors. One of them is that we're not doing games, we're doing tech, which actually just means that it's more like traditional engineering, which I don't understand because I'm a game developer. But the way I see it happen is that there's a lot more, you plan for something, you spec it out, and then you go and do it, and then you evaluate it afterwards. The doing bit is something that is like focused work, that you go into a room and you stay on a task until you feel it's done and you want feedback. Unlike games, where I feel like if on a Monday we do planning, then by Wednesday it's completely derailed, and by on Thursday it's on like crisis mode, and then it's extremely dynamic how that stuff works. And usually the communication is very, very like rapid and has a lot of osmosis to it. So you just kind of be there and you kind of smell the air and learn what's happening, and then you react to it. So none of that exists in our company, interestingly enough. So it's a perfect fit for applying steady synchronization points, like let's discuss on Monday, let's have stand-ups, and let's do like a Friday recap. And even a lot of those can be async nowadays. So instead of making calls, we always ask, can we do this in an async way, where we, for example, have Slack bots ask questions, and then you answer the bot, and the bot kind of puts the answers on a channel. So we don't have to synchronize our day just to transmit information, if you will. So then when we are there, we're more likely to just talk instead of exchange kind of very, what did you do today? Well, this. Okay, nice. So those things just work for us. And
so wait a minute, Slack bot for asynchronous communication. That's very
facilitating.
Yeah.
So that, well, surprisingly easy to do. But yeah, it basically comes down to, we need to do this every day, but nobody wants to spend their hours managing it. So cool, let's make an automation that asks me, how are you doing? And then I can answer, and then we'll get answers. That's nice. But to the question also of like, how is it then with customers? I was really afraid of that. But as it turns out, everybody else has the pandemic too. So then suddenly when everybody goes into this remote mode, then it's almost like a boon to us that the way people want to interact with us as a company is, the only thing that's available to us anyway. So it's not like we had to do the same thing as everybody else is doing, and suddenly it's the perfect solution, meaning we have shared Slack channels, and we have this we try to adapt to everybody else's remote work culture, a couple of hours a week. And so surprisingly, it's pretty good. But then where it breaks down completely, because, the stuff that is not working is international outreach and like scouting new companies and building that trust, right? So it's the same as hiring. Getting new customers is the same as hiring, meaning extremely difficult because it has that trust building component. So maybe I'll have an answer in a year of how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's going to be funny to watch this panel in even 2 years because things are so much in motion currently. Solip, do we have a question from students or from the Twitch chat that we would like to address?
Is that Anna-Kaisa promise? So you'll organize the same panel in 2 years, and then we'll tell
Oh yeah, we'll come back to the issue with the same people. Yeah.
Okay, well, I do have a lot of questions, and actually we only have very few minutes left for this session, so I think I have to trim down a bit. But many of the questions came in before we started the discussion, and there will also something coming up on Twitch. So I will try to put them together. And I think one of the primary question I might have said coming from here is, what if I fail? What is the consequences of fail? Like, have you ever thought of this, or have you ever thought of what could be the worst case scenario if you fail? And let's also kind of go to the trust issue as well. So if let's say you fail your game startups in Finland, what could happen? Would that also impact your trust, reputation, referrals? How do you think?
Yeah, I can start with that. So I haven't had like a bad failure, but I've mapped out those scenarios for what they could have been for me, because as with Tesla, which made Elon the world's richest man, it was almost bankrupt 2 years ago. So you're always on that edge of anything could happen. So I feel free, guys, to add to this. But I think basically the worst case is that you go bankruptcy, at which point, thank God for limited liability companies, emphasis on limited liability, which means unless you explicitly signed a paper saying you're on the hook for some money, you're not. And then it really comes down to the question of, well, what led to the bankruptcy? And did you basically lie to people, or did you mislead somebody, like an investor saying you're going to do X, but then you didn't, and like nobody trusts you anymore, ever? Because if it's, raise a lot of VC money and say, we're going to try to do this, we might fail, 90% will fail, but we'll try. And if you really did, then they'll be happy to give you another 5 million for your next round, because you did try and it could have worked and it would be fine. But then from a legal point of view, if you're part of a...
You learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, there you go. But then the one thing that, I guess from a legal point of view, if you're part of a bankruptcy and you're in the leadership role of the company, board of directors or something, then you will lose your credit rating, which will affect your ability to sign a credit card or even pay for your phone bill. So if you have a lot of money, you don't care. But if you don't have a lot of money, that can change or ruin a life, which is kind of important to understand.
Anything to add up? I think Stella, no, not Stella, Carolina, you were raising hand.
Yeah, well, I would generally say that since like 90% of startups or even more fail anyway, so there is nothing embarrassing in failing. And as Teemu was saying, that on a personal level, you should think about the financial risks and just be sure to, like, if you invest your own money, if you are in a responsible position, just know it. And then, because even in the bankruptcy, you do not need to, like, if you just basically close the company when you run out of money and you pay all the rest of the bills, and that's no problem. So have your budget in order, calculate things and stuff, and ask around, and just it's not embarrassing to fail. If there is a person who has never failed, they have not tried anything. So try, be brave.
Just make sure you have someone in the team who understands finances and generally just business things.
Yes, so or find an outsider advisor and make sure to use them a lot and make sure that they really know the stuff and not.
And I think that this could be pointed out, that it's not like you guys are all talking about success and money, and you're aiming for obviously financial success. But there are a lot of people in the stream and in our students that might not even think about that they would be like hugely successful. But I think that it would still be important to have that person in the team that would understand what goes with the bookings and other stuff, because you can get into a lot of trouble.
And it's
so
really
thank you for the point.
Yeah, it's really beneficial also if you have the business person, the money person, who is not part of the development team, because that is a full-time job to handle the paperwork, the budgets, the whatnots, or communicating with the outside company that handles your budget and whatnots. So just that don't underestimate the amount of work or the amount of hours that takes. And it is completely fine to have people in a games company who are not like hands-on in the product. You need also other types of people in there, and especially the business side. If you make your like a lead programmer, if your CTO is also the business and paper dude person, you will be in trouble because there is just not enough hours in a day.
In our stream chat, somebody is asking, where do you find these CEO people?
Quick. Although, like, just quickly on the failing side as well. So one of the things to understand that is maybe not intuitive is that you can make failing cheap, and you should. Or like if you actually get investment, like actually try to figure out how do I fail as fast as possible, because you will fail. So like if you can actually make a prototype that proves something and you fail, you just learn something. And now like if you try to postpone that failure to the point where like you run out of money, like then you will fail and you're out of money and like you didn't actually build the success. So actually try to come up with a way of like with the budget that you got, fail 100 times, and then you might actually find the one thing that actually like really succeeds well, and that's gonna like enable you. So just assume you're gonna be failing and don't make it crash your company.
And if I have a small addition to this. I completely agree with Sulka. Founding a company in Finland, there is a lot of support available, both financial and other type support, so that it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to have lots of money. You can try with very low stakes and just try, fail fast, and then if it isn't for you, if you are like I'm not an entrepreneur, I don't enjoy this, then just like stop it. Like that's it. You can try. You don't have to do everything, and you can find out that it's not your thing, and that's not embarrassing at all. No one likes everything.
Very good point. Just to address there. Yes, fail. You would eventually fail. You might, and if so, you fail quickly, and like also try to learn from that experience. And I also once founded a company here in Finland. I noticed that a lot of the legal procedures, and then the risk is pretty minimum, and they try to keep it minimum and there's a lot of legal supports I also noticed, mostly like from the municipalities, startup centers and agencies. So I think our streamers, especially the international, like gonna be international entrepreneurs here in Finland, might also check those things out. Those legal supports that probably benefit you in order to find a game company here in Finland, right? And
also one very important resource that could be mentioned is NeoGames.
Yeah, NeoGames, yep.
NeoGames, yes.
So we actually have a built-in network in so many different ways. You've been talking about the people, the team, also like legal help, advising and all that stuff. So I think that our ecosystem is very much well adjusted to this kind of a shakiness of the industry. So I think that we're in a good spot in that way. I would like to also kind of raise the point from Sulka that when you say that you have to kind of fail many times. So I think that this could be translated into how you planned your schedules. Like, do you think that you will do this and then that will succeed? Or do you like kind of have leeway, like you have space in your schedules and plannings that something unexpected will happen? So would you agree with that, Sulka, that that's kind of part of the game in that sense?
Yeah. I think, and what Teemu actually said earlier, I think that's the key, where if you can break down your big problem into small problems and then start solving those one at a time, or like in sequence, then you will learn from learning, like actually solving those problems. And also the thing with games is that like it's almost impossible to basically envision the game as it is like from start to when you finish. So it's a journey of like learning things, and like so you need to keep going forward, solve these small problems that will teach you things about the game and how people react to the game and the technology problems you need to solve and whatever it is, and like if you have proven and solved the problems, that's the building block that you're building on top of. So just like figure out the small slices that you can prove to yourself and consider solved, and then eventually you're actually gonna land on something that works.
And it sounds so trivial. Now that I listen to things that you say, they sound so trivial. Find people that you like.
It's really hard.
Put the problems in small brackets, but you all done this so many times. So it's like, well, these are not slogans just for the sake of it. They are kind of things that people repeat to themselves even over and over again.
And if you play simulation games, this is how it is. You have a certain amount of money and time and resources, and you have to allocate these and make things happen. And then there is an element of chance, like a pandemic coming. And then if it happens, then your resources change, and then you have to readjust.
Yeah.
And I've got a slogan for you as well.
Okay.
The most difficult thing about making games is everything. So if you live by that and like really believe in that, just take all the problems that you have and then approach them as if it was really difficult, like this is the most difficult thing. And then if you have the time and energy to tackle all your problems as if they were really difficult, then you're likely to actually solve them. And like, nice, off you go.
This sounds a lot like playing games, like Carolina was saying that. Well, maybe you guys, you've been playing since like a toddler, perhaps. Yeah, and this is the end result of it. Solip, do you have something like a fruitful or kind of juicy question to the end from students or the audience?
Stella.
Sorry, we're now super warmed up, so probably we would go on like 2 hours more. Yeah, go ahead. Stella.
No. But I think one thing I learned is the problem is never going to get easier. It's just a lot of different problems. It's just the more you experience, the more easier you get. So when you face, there will be a lot of different issues. Sometimes it could be as small as, running out of toilet paper, all this kind of issue. But once you actually learn how to conquer the issue, next time, the next issue is easier. So just take a big breath, and then, everybody's on the same boat. And there are a lot of very nice Finnish industry people, so you can ask, like Samuli.
Samuli wants to say.
I also have a little saying here. So games come and go, even game companies come and go, but the people stay and they learn and they iterate, and they are the real value of this whole industry. Mm-hmm. And that's what we always invest in at Sisu.
Yes, yeah. And that's why you don't crunch, because otherwise the people won't stay.
Absolutely, I was just about to say that because it sounds like we're kind of wrapping up. So it's like the one thing, we're not talking about learnings and all that, but the one that we haven't said here, which I don't think is discussed enough in the games industry, is that you need to pace yourself and not burn out. Yeah. Most leadership people in games in Finland have experienced burnout to some degree. Many people are dysfunctional and unable to do anything anymore in their careers because they burnt out so bad, trying to solve so many problems too fast. We're overloaded, and that's it. Don't burn yourself out. It's not a joke. Just like take your time and plan it and execute, and you'll get there.
It's a good thing to kind of point out.
That's a very excellent point, especially it's very ongoing discussion in not just in Finland, but entire gaming industry about this crunch mode and burnout, and how do we prevent it or try to learn from it to avoid it. So I guess that's a very good point. And that also kind of connects to our final questions, because we're wrapping up, is if you're hiring or if you're raising a fund, why do you think Finland is the place that good for your company? And why does people should work for you here in Finland? Is there any benefit that you want to point out?
Finland has become a superpower country in the game industry. There's a lot of smart people around, and more are coming into the industry every year, hundreds of people. And we are in the maps of all of the big VCs out there. So, this is the dream place to be, actually. Out of all the Nordics, Finland is the place. The Swedes may disagree, but
they're not on this panel, are they?
we disagree with the Swedes if they disagree with us. Yeah.
I can maybe add that in my company we have a very diverse team in many ways, like age, ethnicity, gender, and one of the things that I really appreciate in Finland is the equality we have. Like it's not like there is work to be done still, but it is one of the best places to be. Just like if people have children and want to stay at home taking care of the children, and if someone has health challenges, like just that the support is amazing, and the education, nature, healthcare, all of this. So personally, I wouldn't go and work anywhere else. Like people ask me constantly, like, well, not in the last a couple of months, but still, like, why wouldn't I work in the US? Like, of course I could get a job there. And I'm like I'm a female who is of the age that like it is possible for me to have babies. And even if I don't, like in the States, it's like that's pure insanity. I would never try to like in this. Maybe when I'm too old for any kind of activity, then I would be in the States. But even then, it's like if someone gets ill or loses their job, it's a disaster. So I would not want to work anywhere else.
Oh, that's so patriotic. Others, do you have any pointers for the uniqueness, or maybe even because we are Finns, we can also talk about the negative sides.
Right. What could be done more? If there's any. Yeah. Stella, do you want to add?
I want to add one thing. It's I spoke to a lot of game community in Japan, USA, and all the different Eastern Europe. And one of the key thing, even UK, one of the key thing everybody said is they were very impressed how open people share knowledge, how open people discuss about the problems, and how it's kind of contradictory that Finnish people are very well known for being quiet, but then they're very open-minded, sharing about all the things. And it is really true. I think during my 4 or 5 years with Dazzle Rock, I constantly ask people for help and advice, and there's no one, everybody just openly share. And if that person doesn't know, they always point to me, the other person I can talk to. So I think that's kind of, if you are learning to be a startup founder, especially in game industry, this is like a very nice hub and to actually start. It is, to be honest, it is competitive to hire people because there's so many of company. On the other hand, because there's rapid company grow, come and go, so a lot of people have grown skills and grown knowledge here. So I would say that that's as a foreigner perspective, that I think this is a really nice place. And generally, I can guarantee you guys, a lot of events I participate, I might be the only non-Finnish speaker, but the one great thing is they always change the language, and I'm very grateful about it. So I think that's a really nice, like they have this kind of embracement culture here. Yeah.
I can also relate to that very much. And would you want to add up? This could be the last comment.
Sure. All right. I'll make it a long one. So, well, yeah, I think I agree with everything has been said, and I mean, there's something in the tap water, right? So it's a combination of momentum and culture and everything else that just happens to work for the games market, that we're very quality focused in our design. Like our design principles are always less but better and all that stuff, which works for games in a competitive way. So it's, you just kind of do things like your neighbor does and it seems to work, that you don't have to go against the surrounding culture. That's nice. But one thing that doesn't work here, that you would then, being in Finland, have to kind of focus on, like we were asking earlier, is just thinking big and actually executing in a way that makes it possible, right? Like there's no way Tesla could have come from Finland, because we just don't believe in big successes like that. And that's why everybody hates Peter Westerbacka in the public forums, because he thinks too big and it's kind of ridiculous. And what is this clown doing? But then that also limits the possibilities. So it's really amazing that now that we have Rovio and Supercell and so on, that kind of show that going big is possible. But sure, you could go 10x, 100x from those guys if you really wanted to. So I guess what I'm saying is that the surrounding culture, especially for students and so on, everybody seems to think extremely small. Like, I'm going to make this small game and then it's going to sell maybe 10,000 copies and I'll kind of make break even and then maybe do another game someday. And no, let's aim for the stars and figure it out.
That's awesome.
That's a very good place to stop, I think, like to the negative positive note. It's very Finnish, in my opinion. So thank you for all the panelists and the viewers online. And I'm just really happy with this panel. I think that we could have gone for a few hours more. There's so much more to share. But as said, as soon as we get out of this kind of isolation situation, I'm sure that you can bump into these people and ask questions in person. Or there is a way to also ask questions online from these beautiful minds. So Solib, do you want to say still something at the end, or should we just wrap it up?
I think it's a time for us to wrap up. We actually went over time, but then I know that we still want to continue this discussion. It's so shame that we have to cut this through. But yeah, well, thank you very much for all these insights, and especially like optimistic and positivism that was throwing around through this panel discussion. And if any of our viewers right now on Twitch and also potentially in the future on YouTube, there's definitely a lot of insights and the knowledge information that you can search through. Starts with municipalities, legal supports on startups and game companies. NeoGame was pointed out by Samuli. That's also a great resource for you guys to start. And hopefully we can see you guys all in physical world in IGDA Finland. That's also a good place for you guys to check out.
And check the Global Game Jam on the upcoming weekend.
Yes, the Global Game Jam is actually coming up very soon in this live moment. You can see the t-shirt here again.
So yeah, bye-bye everybody. See you on the next lecture. Thank you, panelists.
Much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
This was Games Now. See you guys again in next month. Thank you very much.